Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. We do have an Avatar Studios update. I'm not sure how much of a piece of news this one is. We'll go through it and see where we kind of get to on it. But first, just a really quick update here. Smoke and Shadow Omnibus edition has been delayed. I think it's only a week delay here. It's from the 28th of September to the 5th of October. But Dark Horse on their side are saying it's October 13th. Now, obviously, the Avatar comics have always been a bit weird about this in terms of like, okay, the mass market release date sometimes it's like the week after, sometimes it's the week before the comic book store release date. In this case, what seems to have happened here is that it's been delayed by a week mass market, but maybe by like, what, 2 weeks? I forget, when all these date changes have happened, but either way, it's a relatively small date change. I suppose for most people it's just 1 week, the 28th to the 5th. You have to put this down to, I guess, just the shipping crisis that's going on at the moment, where like it's a relatively late in the game delay here, but I'm guessing it's just a case of like this is what's happening, that like it got to the publisher, they were a little bit a printer it's a bit late getting through the process, and so they have to delay it, kind of get it shipped out to everywhere it needs to. A 1 week delay is not too bad, at least like we sort of have a sense at the moment where like a lot of the delays that are probably happening are because of that the shipping problems due to COVID. So that's just basically to be aware of that. Next, the Avatar Studios news. So Bryan was on this podcast on the YouTube channel, Rise Up Animation. The video is called The Art of Pitching with Bryan. So right at the end, 2 hours, 6 minutes into a 2 hour, 8 minutes video, he says this as they're basically wrapping up, just to mention that also he is working on Avatar Studios. So here's what he says.
And then, Mike and I, and we're building an awesome team, very slowly at Avatar Studios, small team, but we're working our way up, and it'll be years before that stuff's out, but so excited to share all that with everybody. We've got a bunch of cool stuff in the works. So yeah, I'm sort of stuff in the works. So excited to share all that with everybody. It'll be very slowly at Avatar Studios, small team, but we're working our way up, and it'll be years before that stuff's out, but...
So the big thing that I think people are taking from this is that quote. It'll be years before any of that stuff's out. So I interpret that as being, he is talking about the release of whatever they're working on. As in, you can watch this series on Paramount Plus, this movie is in the cinemas. And that's fine. That makes complete sense. That is true. That is not really a news or an update at all, because what are our expectations based on what we've known before Bryan said this? Well, we have to go back to the original press release, and what they said, the only thing that gave us any hint about a release date: over 50 original series to premiere on Paramount Plus over the next 2 years, including all these franchises and shows from Avatar universe. So that was the only thing that gave us a hint, is that not even the first Avatar project, which is a movie, an Avatar show would be on Paramount Plus in the next 2 years. Now, it's still technically correct. Multiple years? Bryan mentioned multiple years. It probably means that this would put that at Paramount Plus only really launched, March 2021, March this year. So March 2023 is the sort of cutoff point for 2 years of Paramount Plus. I guess it means we're probably not going to hit that, but either way, we were always talking about 2023 before we saw any of this stuff actually come out. And that is years from the initial announcement of Avatar Studios. Now, obviously, you can interpret the whole it'll be years before you see it as being even longer than that, as being, is it 3-4 years, is it 4-5 years? I'm not sure. He didn't say that. But the point is that our expectations of it taking 2 to 3 years is still correct in line with what he said. So that's why I hesitate to say that it's even news, just because of, where it's being said. It's being said in a bit of a sign-off. He's mentioning, here's my social media channel so you can follow me. And I should probably say as well that we're working in Avatar Studios and this is the situation. That was basically just a rewording of what Mike and Bryan both said on the Braving the Elements podcast. I think more specifically they said it's going to be a while before you see any of this stuff because we're working on building it up. And here they just say, he says it'll be years. But he does say we're excited to share with you all this stuff, which obviously is kind of, I suppose, different than sort of, it'll be years before it's out, but we can share with you, different stuff. And that's probably the difference here, is that for me as a fan, I'm more interested right now in terms of just, I want to know the details about this project. Like, what era is it set in? Our first visual. Just confirmation of some sort of a schedule for Avatar Studios of like, okay, officially proper Avatar Studios announcement. Here's our first project. Here's our second project. At this stage, I guess we know the first project is the CG movie number 1, and the second project is an Avatar series. That's what the Brian Robbins interview that revealed the whole CG movie situation did reveal to us. But again, the problem is that these two updates in Avatar Studios are coming from places that we as fans interpret as being like news, but they're not really official announcements. Like the whole CG film thing was a big piece of news last week. But if you read the full article is not about Avatar at all. It's just when he mentions Avatar, he just slips in CG movies. And it's not, he doesn't say anything else really about it other than that. But obviously for us, not having known that beforehand, it is news. And so Bryan merely basically, in my mind, rewording what he said in the podcast, but mentioning years, makes it seem like, oh no, Avatar Studios is nowhere. It's going to be like 2030 before we see anything. Like that's sort of an overreaction, when no, animation takes time, maybe even more time, because they're building up their studio, and they're planning multiple movies, multiple series, spin-offs, one-offs. They're doing the publishing side of things as well, I guess, at this point. All the merchandise that we've seen coming out, I guess, ultimately has to go through Avatar Studios at some point. So it's a big, big project. To me, I think I would interpret this as, at most, they're probably not going to hit this, within 2 years deadline. But we'll probably still hear about some of this stuff within the next 2 years. It obviously puts into question in terms of like, okay, New York Comic Con is coming up next month. Are they going to say anything about Avatar Studios at New York Comic Con? Based on that, I'd kind of be like, no, unless they're just being very coy ahead of a more official announcement. Now, the reason there is some expectation about news is because of an article that came out in March where Deadline got a statement from Brian Robbins, who again is the head of Nickelodeon, basically. Early stages of developing the Avatar Airbender universe. I think we will be ready very soon to tell the world what is coming first, but we are not there yet because we're in early stages of creative development. Very soon. Not just soon, very soon. It's been 6 months. And sure, since then, I suppose, technically in that Viacom article, he did go on to say CG movies and an Avatar series, and that, I suppose, is what is coming first. But it's not really an official announcement, which that's my interpretation of this, in terms of us as the fandom. Do we know more with that than we knew before? Not really. So again, the thing is just on, okay, when are we finally going to be brought properly into the loop on Avatar Studios in terms of a rough estimate of, here's the movie, it is planned, scheduled for here. Here's the first series, it is planned, scheduled for here. Plus, here's our publishing lineup, now that the publishing is more under Avatar Studios, that's, I think, more of the stuff I'd be thinking of coming off this, is that, yeah, you can definitely take this as being like, oh, does it mean everything's delayed? No, it's just the vagueness of saying words like soon or saying years when that could mean anywhere from 2 to realistically 5. That's just what happens here. But the thing is, we know animation takes like 2-3 years to do, depending on the scale of the project, and that, I guess, Avatar Studios was announced relatively early after being announced. It's just, keep us in the loop on this stuff. My bigger thing about, just in terms of what I want next from Avatar Studios, is that, okay, fair enough, if you're still at a super early stage in all the animation projects, fine, you can't tell us anything. But I think they have to say something about the publishing stuff and where that is. Maybe it's still early days of like Avatar Studios taking over the publishing side of things, and that the Joan Hilty reveal also was just last week. But the thing for me is just that this is, Avatar Studios is meant to be the sort of like return of Avatar. We saw the return of the fandom in a way, to a degree, with the Avatar's return to Netflix, and that has basically led up to this announcement of Avatar Studios, hyping up Avatar's coming back and we're gonna go all in on it. We're already seeing the merchandising go wild, and it's probably only going to get even crazier going into next year and onwards. The problem, I think, in all of this that's been very clear to see over the last few months especially, is that where's the new content? By that, I don't mean the new animation stuff from Avatar Studios. I mean the comics and the novels. Why, at the time when we're building up Avatar to be the best it's potentially ever been, we're going to get there eventually, I suppose, why have the comics and novels slowed to an almost complete stop? In the sense that I've talked about the schedule of upcoming stuff before. The only new story content for the official publishing side of things is the Chibi Comic Volume 1. And we don't even know if that's technically canon to the mainline continuity or if it's its own Chibi thing. Either way, I don't think it's going to be a big splash. It's going to make a big splash because it is just a Chibi comic. Beyond that, Avatar Legends role-playing game, that looks to be the next time we're going to get proper like lore information or any sort of story content. So I think there is actually going to be a lot of pressure if what you interpret from Bryan here is that we're less looking at maybe early 2023, and we're maybe more looking at late 2023 into 2024 for maybe hearing about Avatar Studios, the animation project. We need to get the publishing side of things going again. And the problem is that like it's already been going, and I think most people would say it's been quite slow in the aftermath of Korra, like 2014 to now. It's been relatively slow. It's always been a little bit stop-start. But I don't think it's ever been so stop as it's been right now. Where Suki alone came out, and then Beast of the Four Nations gets postponed indefinitely. That schedule, even though there's a decent amount of books on it, most of them reprints, is looking extremely light. And we're realistically solicited into roughly the midpoint of next year, and there's no real sign of what's going on. So I hope that Avatar Studios, even if they can't say anything about their animation projects, do say something about the plan for the publishing side of things. Just because there's reasons for us to believe that there is a Korra comic, an Avatar comic, and a novel coming at some point. With the novel, of course, the German publisher teased that they had heard that there probably is going to be a novel in 2022. Similarly, the German publisher also was the one to say that, yeah, Korra comic next year. And then also we know that they've been working at some point on the Korra comic. We don't know how Avatar Studios has affected that, though. That's the big thing in all of this. With Avatar comics, the main reasoning behind this would just be that the switch to the one-shot stories came down from Mike and Bryan, and it felt very much in line with, while we prepare Avatar Studios, do this. So a big switch like that, are they only going to keep that around for one trilogy of comics? It just feels like I get the sense that Faith Erin Hicks probably is still working on Avatar. So what is she writing next? I mean, it realistically kind of has to be the next Avatar comic, but what is it? Are we going to see a switch back to properly telling the post ATLA comic timeline, or is it more one shots? But the idea is that we expect there to be ATLA comics at some point. So those are the three things that I think you probably really have to get announced. And like, if there's like a reveal and like those are even heavily delayed, that is going to be very unfortunate. The idea that we could theoretically go through most of 2022 with basically no new content feels crazy, given where the fandom is going, where we're heading. And that's what they need to, I think, really get going on, is use that publishing stuff to be the lead in and to really get people excited for when you finally are ready to go with your big announcements, because there's only so excited that you can keep people when you're saying things like this of like, oh yeah, we just announced Avatar Studios, hype. Yeah, it's going to be like 3 years. Sorry. You know, it's that sort of thing. Of course, everyone is going to be like, you know, yeah, be patient, you know, we know, great, it's good that you're taking your time, fantastic. But the fandom still has to roll on. Like, there still is an expectation of us getting some new content between now and then. The difference, though, is that in the, you know, the dark times, in a way, 2014 to before the Avatar Studios announcement, we were relatively regularly getting books. Slower than we wanted, but we were still getting stuff. Now it seems like we're not getting stuff, and we're just waiting for some sort of an announcement. That's the announcement that I think is imminent, or has to be imminent. So they're my thoughts on this whole situation. Again, I don't really feel the need to read too much into this. At this stage, I am just like, can you say something more official, substantial, publicly about Avatar Studios? That's kind of what I'm waiting for, rather than these like, oh, at the end of a podcast he said this one thing and let's read super heavily into what he said. In this case, it's how do you interpret years? I don't know. So yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. Minor delay to Smoke and Shadow Omnibus, and then Bryan's comment here about Avatar Studios. So that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.